Hello everyone, I hope that you're all well. Thanks so much for watching this video. We're going to be exploring in this ways to structure your rehearsal. So when we think about structuring a rehearsal, I want to begin by saying that how long you rehearse for and the contexts that you rehearse within are as easy as saying how long is a piece of string. So everything that we talk about here is going to be quite general, but I will kind of dig into some specifics. But you, of course, understand the context of your rehearsals, the context of your cast, and the context of where you're rehearsing best. And the way that you structure your rehearsal, of course, will need to be flexible to your particular context. But hopefully I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight into ways to structure your rehearsal process and maybe the different steps to think about it. But before I do that, maybe I should let you know who I am. So my name's Ellen, I'm a theatre director and I've been doing it for about 10 years. I've got a lot of experience of working with young people and with people who maybe are making theatre for the first time. And over the course of my career, I have kind of worked with lots of different directors and led my own rehearsal processes. And kind of by and large, most of those end up feeling a similar kind of structure, but that also includes, I've worked on devising work as well as Shakespeare and Chekhov, so the kind of two different ends in terms of kind of beginning points. Now, obviously, for Connections, you have a fantastic wealth of fantastic plays, and I hope that you've enjoyed picking your play, and that is going to very much be the thing that guides your rehearsal process. So I have included in this tutorial a kind of graph which is very broad but shows you maybe some of the steps that you might need to think about. But before we go into that, I just want to say that before you even start about rehearsing, there are so many steps I feel that are useful to you as a director, to your creative colleagues, whoever they may be, young people or colleagues, and of course your cast. You all need to understand fully what you're about to do so that you together can proceed through the rehearsal process that keeps everyone engaged and also gets you to a point of being able to share a fantastic piece of work. So I'm going to be leading you through a process, and like I say, the kind of timeline for that will be obviously dependent on your contexts, but I'm going to kind of talk you up to the home performance because that's like the biggest first hurdle, and then after that your Connections director will obviously support you in thinking about the next phase before you transfer to your partner theatre. So as I say, I've got some experience of working in devised contexts as well as scripted contexts. And the way that I tend to work in devised work is that often, and lots of different productions will be like this, you'll have a period of what we call R&D, research and development. And actually it's becoming much more common that even kind of scripted pieces have a process of R&D, research and development at the beginning to kind of work out what this play is, what it could be. In the devising context, we kind of think about what is the story or what are the themes. But in a play context, an R&D process enables you to play around with the script before kind of beginning at Act 1, Scene 1 and going through. And I think that the best rehearsal processes, or let's not call it best, let's call it most successful rehearsal processes, often begin with a period of research and development and essentially play, because these things are called plays, and I would encourage you from the very beginning, when you're thinking about beginning your rehearsal process, that you have play front and centre of the room so that you can be building your cast and your ensemble at the same time as exploring what this amazing piece of work that a writer has given you contains and all the potential in it. And I think particularly for Connections projects, and for lots of others, but I think connections particularly. Obviously, at the beginning, you're really wanting to think about how are you going to nurture this cast, especially with the year that we've had. It may be that your casts have made plays before, but we've had a lockdown and that's not been able to happen, or maybe it has. But also, you may be working with people who haven't ever done a play first, and it's their first time. So keeping things lively, open, not restricted at the beginning of a rehearsal process, I think is really important. So if we have a look at the graph now, I have sort of suggested that at the beginning. So I think it would be really helpful to have a first period of your rehearsal process as an exploration period. Now here I've just put weeks 1 to 2, but obviously you can think about how many sessions that is, but a really decent chunk at the beginning that shows the way that you're going to be proceeding with this piece, and also finding ways to play around with it. And then we're going to move into the development phase, where maybe you take some of those ideas and you begin to kind of nurture some of those, choose some, chuck some away, but you start to kind of develop those. And then, and only then, I would encourage you to begin at the beginning and work through. And then there's also this idea of priority moments, and I'm going to dig into that within this tutorial. And those moments maybe are things like, that there's a really, you want a kind of all singing, all dancing opening, and that's not going to happen in just 1 or 2 rehearsals. That's going to take the whole rehearsal time, and maybe that's your warm-up at the beginning of every rehearsal with your ensemble. And then kind of by the end, towards the end, you're getting closer to your performance, I'd encourage you to do some runs, so to kind of get it going, so that the first time that you're stitching it all together isn't your dress rehearsal, because therein lies stress, and of course feeding in the technical aspects before you go into your home performance space. So you can be bringing in music or sound effects, maybe even experimenting maybe with some lighting things, and we'll dig into that. And then you have your home performance and all that brings in terms of a moment of success, that you've reached that point, and that's the goal that you're aiming for at first. So that's a bit of an overview, and now we're going to dig into each step on its own. So explore. So I'm assuming that you will have chosen the play that you're going to be working on, and maybe actually before this director's weekend you've already started to talk to your cast about it, or maybe not. But I'd encourage you that for the first, let's say, even the first quarter of your whole rehearsal time, that you're in a period of exploration and development. So explore can mean understanding the plot. Some of these plots are tricky and difficult, and maybe are structured in a narrative way, in a different way than your cast has ever experienced. So spending some real time kind of getting to know your play together. Maybe you've cast, maybe you haven't, but finding different ways to kind of spread the play out, dig into it. And I'm sure that you've got lots of exercises that you can do for that. But one might be that you storyboard your play, whether that be in tableaus, or that you get each group to sketch out a kind of beat of the play and put it together. I sometimes think that seeing a play visually on a wall or on a floor is really helpful to kind of get a sense of where you're going, because sometimes when you've got kind of a stack of papers and you just look at page 1 and then page 2, it doesn't always help you to understand the whole arc. And I really think that for young actors, it's really important that they begin to understand the bigger play and understanding their roles, or the function of each moment of the play to get it to where it goes. So thinking about doing some timelining of the play, and within that you might want to start to muck around with certain bits. Maybe there's a kind of problem moment that is going to be challenging to stage. So in this kind of beginning phase of exploration and play, thinking of ways to activate those moments, to to problem solve it together. And you as a director may find that very useful because it gives you an opportunity to see the different ways that you could be doing this piece, and that's inspired by your cast. And that might give them a sense of ownership and a sense that they're in this too, that it's not all on you as the director, and that your full ensemble are there to support the emergence of this fantastic piece of theatre. So develop. So maybe from the things that you've explored in your exploration period, there are some juicy bits that you kind of want to start working up. So you maybe start to spend some time on certain moments of those, and you start to dig a little deeper into those and form those. It could be that they're just singular moments from the piece, or it could be character development. So you could spend some time on working on how to support your cast to get into their character, and maybe during this period you kind of begin to finalise the casting. Now I know that sometimes connection plays don't have assigned lines, so maybe in this first bit with explore and then develop, that you start to nail down some of those key decisions that are going to shape the rest of your rehearsal process. So you spent, let's say, 4 weeks out of your rehearsal process beginning to explore and experiment with your play and begin to make some decisions. And some of those decisions may also include design, you may have some decisions about staging, whether you're going to stage it in the round or end on or whatever you kind of want to decide. So then finally it may feel like you get to rehearse. So by that I mean going from the beginning to the end, step by step. But hopefully before you do that, you, through your exploration and development, have created this timeline, as I say, and you can understand as a director, but also as a cast, the different kind of layers of the play. So it may be that there's quite a lot of like one-on-one character moments, like duologues or even monologues. So obviously you may not want to rehearse those moments with 60 other people in the room. So that really starts to define how you're starting to rehearse and how you're working with your cast to most effectively use the time. It could be that, say, monologues could happen in lunch hours, where that's an intense amount of time that you can spend with your particular actor, or that if you're in a youth theatre context, that maybe someone comes 20 minutes early, or you can work that out. But finding ways that you best make use of everyone's time as well as yours as director is going to be really important when you're working chronologically. I would encourage you to work fairly chronologically, just because I think all actors appreciate that, but particularly younger actors who are maybe new to this style of making art, making theatre, and that through that chronological rehearsal process, your actors may be able to start to feel the kind of arc of their character journey, and they may have been able to start to identify that in the exploration and development phases, but that can be built on, and rather in TV and film they kind of like shoot things out of sequence. Very much when you're working a play, it's really useful to go from the start to the end, and it may be that you do that in big broad brushstrokes, that maybe you spend not that long physically staging the play, understanding where people roughly are going to be so that you've got a kind of sense of it. Or you may want to go a bit slower and work a little bit more detailed, whereas with the broad brushstrokes, broad brushstroke the whole thing, and then you might go back and then start to work on finer things. That's really up to you as a director, and you will understand your cast better. But also thinking about ways within this chronological rehearsal process that you encourage the cast to remember what they're doing. So you may want to kind of share with them some of the skills of how you can like draw blocking and write things down. Obviously always making sure that in a rehearsal they have their script and a pencil and a rubber, because things change, but it's really important that they take responsibility for their journey, both their character emotional journey but also physically as well. So alongside the chronological rehearsal period, you may also have priority moments that you've already identified that are going to take a bit longer to stage. For example, you may have a scene that you know demands quite a lot of a kind of physical approach to the staging, and we know that those things take practice, especially when you're dealing with lifts. I don't mean stair lifts, I mean lifts. And also when you're thinking about any choreography, movement, it takes a while to get those things physically into the body. The same with music and singing. So it might be that you also find ways that during your rehearsal process that you return to these more challenging stage moments often. So that might be your warm up into a rehearsal. Maybe you always have 20 minutes of singing a week, or however you structure. So thinking about how do you allow time for these more technical or these more skill-based performance moments to develop and build. So I would encourage you to think about running that concurrently to your structured chronological rehearsal process as well. And then suddenly it's 2 weeks to go to your performance, and you have got to the end of things. So I would really encourage you to do as many runs as possible. So that means from going from the beginning to the end, eventually without stopping. But at first it might be a staggered run, or it might be that you run the first half one session and the second half the other. And then that gives you as a director an opportunity to make notes and to deliver those and work those, because some of those notes you won't need to rehearse. You can just trust your actor that they're going to take that on board and do it. But then there are some that you might want to work with them, and also there are things as a director that you may realise once you see it all together that you want to change. So yeah, I think the thing to avoid is your first run through being your dress rehearsal. I would really encourage you to do 2 or 3 runs before that point. But also thinking about running things, kind of going back to the chronological rehearsal process, also think about how you can kind of recap on things you've already done. So sometimes in my rehearsals, I will be working on something one day, and for the last X amount of minutes at the end of the session, we run what we've done that day. So that gives an opportunity to kind of cement that and remember it. Or you may want to do that at the beginning of your next rehearsal to run what you did last week. But I would also kind of warn you, I suppose, that sometimes if you run something at the beginning of rehearsal, you're just going to want to fix that and you're not going to get onto what you were wanting to do. So I would say be careful with some of that. And then after that, during that stage, actually, I would encourage you to have technical aspects in the room. So if you know that music or sound is really important in your piece, there should be no reason that you can't rehearse that in the room. So you're not waiting for your technical rehearsal. There are some things that you can start to kind of put in early doors. If you know that there are some tricky props or fiddly things, get them in the room as soon as possible, so that those technical rehearsals can happen at the same time as your normal rehearsals. Of course, you're also going to need tech before your dress rehearsal, but as far as possible, it would be great if you can already have some of those things in your everyday rehearsals, so that everyone can get used to it. And that includes your stage management team as well, especially if that's young people, that they get an opportunity to practice cueing, because that's as important as an actor moving to where they need to be on stage, is someone cueing at the right time and in the right way. And then it's showtime. So you have your home performance. You may have more than one home performance, which I think is a great opportunity for your actors, but obviously everyone's context is different. So you have your home performance, and you do all of the things that you know about warming your cast up, getting them pumped and ready. But also the beauty of Connections is the home performance is not the end. In some ways it's the beginning. So I think that there is some freedom to allay anxiety and nerves, to say this is the first time we're going to get to do this, and we are going to get to do it again at the partner festival, but let's give this one our best go, so that we can feel confident when we're thinking about transfer, because that has a whole new set of exciting challenges and considerations. But that's it. You've got to the end. You've done your home performance, and all of those rehearsals have really paid off. So I would encourage you, though, when I'm thinking about kind of your chronological rehearsals and your whole steps that I've shared with you, I really encourage you to sit down and kind of plan those out in advance. Obviously, your focuses on each rehearsal day are going to change as the rehearsal process continues. But if you can have a sense that, okay, so by week 5, we're going to be at page 36. Those kind of things can be really helpful for driving you forward, and then you know what you need to prioritise. So having a sit down, just yourself maybe, because you do need time for planning yourself, but also maybe with your cast, and you think about, okay, this is the end point, this is our home performance, now let's put in our key kind of dates of what we want to hit by when, so that we can work backwards, so we can have our home performance as the goal, and we think about our tech and our dress, and we think about making sure we've got enough time for our runs, and thinking about how much time we need for our rehearsals, and thinking about how much time we need for our development and our exploration. And really, that process begins today or tomorrow at the latest, in terms of thinking about how you're going to get to this end goal of your home performance. And yes, that rehearsal structure planning starts as soon as the weekend ends, really. And I really, really hope that you enjoy that process, and enjoy the fact that it has a structure to it, that you're not just going in on the Monday saying, okay, we've got to do this, let's go, without really understanding your play first, because that is going to pay off in many ways when you get into your chronological rehearsal process. And it may be that you want to keep some of your notes from the exploring and developing phase around the room, if you're able to do that, or just keeping ways to have a look at that. And it might be that by the time that you've got 3/4 of your way through your chronological rehearsal period, that actually in some ways everyone's kind of slightly losing sight of where we're going. So going back to some of that initial exploration development work that you did, the kind of timeline of your play, and working out the moments of your production that are going to really need focus, that can sometimes really help you ground yourself in where you're going. So good luck, and I wish you all the best. I know that this year is remarkable, and I'm sure that as a result you are going to be creating remarkable pieces of work. And of course, you know your groups best, you know the challenges of bubbles and all of that, so you are the experts of your groups, and you will become the experts of your play, and certainly the experts of your production. So I wish you all the best with that, and I can't wait to see some of your work.